All right, we are now ready for section 2. Now, it doesn't take us very long to understand that when we try and manually calculate out the interest on compounded loans using simple interest for every compounding period, we don't like doing that. That just takes a lot of time. And I think you've heard me say before that mathematicians can sometimes be lazy. So we like to figure out easy ways to do things. Now, I wanted to show you how to do it manually because it helps you see what is actually happening. Every compounding period, we have to calculate the interest. But how can we do it easier? Well, there actually are two different ways to do it easy, and we're going to learn both as we go through Chapter 11. The first way is actually with a formula. Now, this formula contains an exponent, and we will learn that in Section 5, okay? But this helps us to continually figure out how to calculate interest based off of the number of periods in a year, what the rate is, etc., etc. Okay? But what we're going to do next is actually you can figure out interest out of tables. They've created tables ahead of time, and basically what they do, the table will be on 345. I will take a picture of it and post it in this lesson. But what you do is basically in the table you determine how many periods you have in a year. Not in a year, I'm sorry. How many total periods are you compounding for? So they have 25 periods here, okay? So if it's once a month for 2 years, you're going to have a total of 24 periods, okay? And then you have to figure out what your interest rate is per period, not per year, all right? And so what that means is if I'm doing 10% interest per year and I'm compounding twice a year, my interest rate per period is actually 5%, all right? So once you find in the table how many periods you need to calculate for, plus what the interest rate per compounding period, so let's say I'm looking for 24 and at 5%, all right? So that's 3.22, all right? So that's a factor per dollar, which relatively means is that all I have to do is, if I know what my principal is, I multiply by this factor, and I know what my interest is. All right? So by using tables, we can just quickly not have to do it every year. We know by the compounding periods and the interest rate per period, yep, this is my factor. I multiply my principal by that factor. That is my compounded interest. I add that to the principal to get my future value or my compounded amount. Okay? So, turning next to page 346. You guys would dig my setup here right now. All right? We have to understand how interest is compounded. So we look at how many compounding periods. So we talked about if it's annually, that's just once a year. So there's one compound. If it's annually, there's only one compounding period per year. Let me scoot that over. If it's semi-annually, that would be every 6 months. That's twice a year. If it's quarterly, it's going to be every 3 months. That's 4 times a year. So that's compounding periods per year. If it's monthly, that's every month. That's going to be 12. If it's daily, that's going to be every day, 365. Now, as we talk about savings accounts, high-yield savings accounts, market, oh my goodness, my brain is freezing, but money market, there we go, money market accounts, CDs, they generally have annual, semi-annual, quarterly, or monthly, all right? The only interest that calculates at 365 in the commercial market or even in the consumer markets with interest accounts is actually interest against you, and that would be credit cards. They use 365 as the interest rate against you, and so they compound it daily. Basically what they do is they figure out your average daily balance and then compound that interest daily for the month. And we already said the more compounding periods there are, the more interest. All right? So as you can see, credit cards, they like to collect as much interest as they can. Okay? But we know what it says here, so annually is once, semi-annually twice, so on and so forth from the table here. Now, the compounded amount, or the future value, is basically what I said earlier, the table factor that we found times your principal. All right? So to use the tables, we have to know the number of compounding periods and the interest rate per year, as we showed above. Always there's several options. The greater number of compounding periods a year, the higher the interest earned on the investment. All right? So then what we need to know next, to find the number of compounding periods of an investment, multiply the number of years by the number of periods per year. All right? So we need to know how many total. I said we need to know how many periods total in our loan or in our savings account. So that's always going to be the number of years times the periods per year. So if it's semi-annually, which is 2 per year, and we say 3 years, that's 3 years times 2, that's going to be 6. We'd have 6 total compounding periods. All right? I also said we need to find out the interest rate per period, because when we compound, we're only calculating the interest on that time period. We also always say that the original interest is always given to you annually. So the problem we saw earlier was 6% annual, 5% annual. Now when we did our simple interest formula, earlier when I did my problem, we actually multiplied it by a half, because twice a year, correct? So we were actually cutting our interest rate in half, and we were calculating it on that half year. So what we need to do when we use the tables is find out, so what is our interest rate per period? All right, so if it's twice a year, 10% divided by periods per year, 10 divided by 2 is going to be 5%. If it's 4 per year, all right, so if it's 8% nominal rate, and we're doing it quarterly, so there's 4 per year, 8 divided by 4 is 2%, so on and so forth. All right, so we always need to find out how many periods total, and that's this left side column, and what is the nominal rate, and that's the right side, or that's the top. So how many total compounding periods we're calculating for, and then what interest rate per period. All right, and that's what we have to calculate. Again, I'll take a picture of this, all right, and let you know. So what I'm going to do real quick here is we're going to do a little practice problem. John invested $1,200 in an account at 8%, compounded quarterly. All right? So 8% compounded quarterly. How many per year? Quarterly is 4. All right? So we have to remember that. And he's doing it for 5 years. So quarterly, 4 times 5, there's going to be a total of 20 periods. All right? And if it's 4 times a year, the interest rate per period is going to be 8% divided by 4. So the rate per period is going to be 2%. And that's what they calculate down below here. First, they need to know the interest rate per period. The nominal rate is 8%. Periods per year, 4 quarterly. So it's going to be 2%. How many total compounding periods? Well, it's for 5 years, 4 periods, so it's 20. All right? So it's 2% and 20. So on the table, we need to find our factor. I'm going to flip back. Compounding periods, 20. All right? And our interest rate is 2%. So you can see here, our factor is going to be 1.48595. 1.48595. All right? So you notice here, that's what they found in the problem. The compounded amount is found by multiplying that factor, 1.48595, times the principal of $1,200. So now the compounded amount is $1,783.14. All right? The amount of interest found, you take the principal, subtract it from the compounded amount. He earned $583.14. So that's a little easier. All we got to do is find the total number of compounding periods, which was 20, and the interest rate per compounding period. So the original rate was 8% quarterly. 8 divided by 4 is 2%. Once you find that, you can find your factor, multiply that by the principal, and you're done. All right? Go ahead, pause so you can read the problem here. All right? Jenny invested $20,000 at 6% interest compounded semi-annually, that's twice, for 8 years. Use the table. All right? Again, I'll have a picture in the lesson. You can use the table to calculate what the interest is. All right, I'm going to pause now and make a new video.